Amen. Ooh. All right. Nothing exploded. That's good. We made it. We are continuing our Sabbath series during our season of spiritual renewal here at Church in the Palms. And I just want to remind you, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but we do have sermon notes in the backs of your chairs. So if you'd like to kind of follow along, if you'd like to take notes, they say, studies show that writing things down helps us to remember. And so it may be helpful to write some things down. And listen, I am not a huge notebook guy. I don't write a lot of stuff down. I use my phone way more than I should for stuff like that. If you look at my notes app in my phone, there's about 650 different notes things in there. It's crazy. But I love that you can write these down. You can stick them in your Bible. And maybe 6 months from now, when you're trying to think of that one thing that Evan said that one time in that one sermon, you might be able to turn and find it and be like, oh yeah, that's what I wrote down. And then you might come to me and be like, Evan, remember when you said this? And I'll be like, I never said that. That was God speaking directly to you. That wasn't about anything I said. That's the great thing about notes. So we leave a lot of space for you to write your own notes and your own thoughts. So take that opportunity if you enjoy that. If that helps you to recall and remember, we want to encourage you to grab those and utilize those. But we're talking about the Sabbath. And remember that Sabbath kind of gets its start from the very first pages of Scriptures. In Genesis 2, it says that when God had finished all the work of creation, when he had finished everything he made, he stopped. He rested on the seventh day. On the seventh day, he rested from the works of his hands, from the creating, from the work, from the process, from the building. We have said, though, that Sabbath is more than just stopping. It's kind of a fourfold act. It's stopping, which we talked about last week, and how important it is sometimes to just stop because we are always going. We are always hustling. We are always hurrying. But Sabbath is also rest. It is delight. It's enjoying God's creation and the works of his hands and actually sitting down and realizing all the blessings that we have in our lives. And it also is contemplation. It's allowing our hearts to listen and to hear from God, but it's also allowing ourselves to reflect on what God is teaching us and where he's leading us. And it's an opportunity for us to worship, because often what happens when we begin to contemplate, when we begin to think, when we begin to sit in God's good creation, what we realize is it brings us to a place of worship. Not very often in my life have I gone for a walk out in the park and gotten angry at the beautiful trees. I've never left feeling more frustrated than when I arrived. There's something that happens when you begin to just take in God's good creation that just can fill you. It's sort of like what happens when we worship. I don't know about you, but sometimes I come into this room and I am not always in the right headspace. Anybody else ever have that problem, or is that just a me thing? Okay, I try really hard to prepare my heart. If it's just me, I'm going to work on it. Hold me accountable to this. There are times when I walk in here and I have not had a chance to really center my heart, center my thoughts on everything that God has given me, all the blessings that I have. Maybe I'm worried about the 600 things that are happening, all the things that might be going wrong. Maybe I'm thinking about this whole message thing right here that I think is really, really important. But the reality is this is probably the least important thing that we're going to do today. But what tends to happen is while I worship, God begins to break through that. And by the time I actually get to the place where I have to get up here and talk, kind of like today, he's softened my heart, and he's kind of prepared me that this is not about me in the first place, right? And sometimes that's the best place we can come to, is realizing that worship was not ever about us in the first place. So maybe you didn't like that song this morning. Maybe you didn't like the tempo that we did it. Maybe that person next to you was clapping off beat and it really distracted you. Whatever it is, guess what? It wasn't for you. It's not a show for you. It's a show for him. So it's okay if we don't enjoy it. It's okay if it didn't fit our needs, because it wasn't about us. It's about what does he get from it. And so we just have to offer it up freely. And I'm not trying to preach to anybody. I'm preaching to my own soul, right? We just need to come to a place where we are listening to the heart of God. All right, so I asked last week, how was your Sabbath? All right, so I'm going to do it again. How many of you tried to Sabbath this week? Raise his hands up. How many of you tried? Okay. How many of you would say that attempt, that was better than last week? I think last week we had like one hand to go in the air. So I am so proud of you guys. If you didn't raise your hand, that's okay, because we're working on this. We're gonna get through this together. I hope by the end of these 6 weeks, by Easter, we will all have attempted to Sabbath. Okay? So that's my goal. We're not going for perfection right now, okay? How many of you feel like you Sabbathed well? It was a great experience. You loved every second of it. No distractions, no problems. It was great. Okay, a few. How many of you struggled? How many of you felt like your Sabbath was a struggle? There was like a resistance. It was almost like you were fighting against something. Anybody feel that way? That's how I feel when I try to Sabbath. It's like that phone call, that emergency, that thing that you can't ignore just happens to fall on the morning of your Sabbath. And it's like, well, I know I said I wouldn't be on the phone, but this is an emergency. I need to respond to this. There's a sense of guilt maybe that comes in when we Sabbath. I'm resting, I'm relaxing, maybe I'm not returning text messages, I'm not answering those emails, and there's this sense of I'm letting people down, I'm being selfish because I'm protecting my time, and that feels weird in our culture. Maybe there's some pushback in our own personal lives, or maybe from people around us that are like, wait a second, you can't rest, you can't relax, you need to help me, you need to do this, you need to get things done. This practice of Sabbath is countercultural. Our culture will resist. Our world will resist. There will be pushback because we are doing something that our world looks at like it's crazy. This idea of Sabbath is going to feel strange to us because our world tells us that we are only as good as what we do. We're only as good as what we produce or what we consume. When we finally push back, when we finally start to try to rest, it creates this feeling of restlessness, especially at first. It can even bring on sadness. There's actually a phrase that the people who Sabbath regularly say, it's called Sabbath sadness. And there's a sense of when you stop, you start to feel. And maybe those feelings don't always feel good. And the thing is, that's what we need to do. It's good to feel our feelings, but we like to drown out those feelings of sadness, of struggle, of pain, of maybe guilt for our sins by just keeping ourselves busy, so we always have an excuse not to think about that thing that maybe God is trying to wake us up to. C.S. Lewis once said that pain is God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. And I think sometimes we drown out our pain by just keeping ourselves busy. But here's what the world tells us. Do you guys know that the average American sees between 4,000 and 10,000 ads a day? 4,000 to 10,000 ads every single day. From billboards to commercials to logos on clothing, to ad on a magazine or a newspaper, advertisements on the toy or the thing you just bought, and now there's a new thing. On the video that you're watching, there's ads down the side. On this side, there's ads across the top, and if you don't have a good pop-up blocker, there's ads that just pop up in your face. Ads are everywhere. If you watch a sporting event, if you watch a YouTube video, I watched a video this week. It was about 10 minutes long. It had 3 ad breaks in the video. It had a sponsored segment during the video, and the guy took like 10 seconds to promote his merch store at the beginning of the video. So in a 10-minute video, I got bombarded by 5 ads, and all the time they were doing that, there were also ads along the side and the bottom and even in the comments. We've become numb to it. We don't even realize it, but ads are everywhere. And what are they trying to do? They are trying to convince us that we need their product. In order to be happy, in order to be fulfilled, in order to be able to finally have the good life, we just need their product. It's the one thing we've been missing. Marketing is all about manufacturing desire. It's about creating perceived need. It's about creating discontent. It's supposed to make us feel like we don't have enough. And if we just get this new pill or this new phone or this new toy or this new gadget, finally we will be happy. And yet, almost always, at least for me, when I buy something new, when I finally dive into the new gadget, maybe it's the new iPhone. You know they release them every year? And every year, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened in the history of the world. You got to line up at the store because this technology, you can't miss it. And I've fallen for this trap a few times where I thought, I need it. I just paid my phone off. It's time to make a new loan. Come on, $30 a month on my phone bill. Who's even going to notice? And then you get it and you get this feeling, what is it called? Buyer's remorse. When you buy a car, you're so excited. Sitting in that sales room, you feel like a king. Then you drive it off the lot, and the first time the brakes squeak, the first time something makes a weird rattle, you realize that this really didn't make you happy either. That having this car, everybody else, when you drive by them down the road in your nice new car, they're not looking at you and bowing down. They're not rolling down their windows and going, nice ride, man. You thought this would be the thing. When you buy a house or a new apartment, it's always going to be the best thing. It's always going to be the answer to all of your marriage problems, all your family problems, all your time and commitment problems. All these things are going to be solved because now we have a guest room. Now we have a man cave. Everything will be fine now. And then you move in. My realtor told us when we bought our current house, she said, when you move in, your wife is going to cry. Because once all the furniture and all the stuff on the walls are gone and it's emptied out, you're going to see all the imperfections you didn't see when you bought it. When you came and walked through, it was perfect. Now, one thing we learned, I don't know if it was set up like this when we bought our house, but our house is in the flight path. Anybody else in the flight path down here on the airport? So we get lots of planes over our house. We toured our house like 4 times before we bought it, and I don't think a single time a plane flew over that house. The day we moved in, we sat in our backyard and we sat down to just breathe in this perfect house that we'd bought. 0 regrets. And we're having a little conversation. All of a sudden there's this, and all of a sudden we can't hear each other. And for the next 6 hours, every 15, every 10, every 5 minutes, a plane flies over our heads. I don't know if our realtor is a genius and she just planned it this way, but I can't tell you when the last time a plane hasn't flown over our house. Now, we've gotten used to it, but it was one of those moments where you realize, oh, this isn't perfect. It doesn't exist. There is buyer's remorse every time we think that this thing is going to finally solve our problems. We feel left missing something. In the 1950s, there was an influx of these things called time-saving devices. They were marketed and designed to let women know that this was going to free you up to finally be able to have leisure time at home. Buy a dishwasher, buy a washing machine, buy a microwave, and now, instead of all that time that you are going to spend washing the clothes and doing the laundry and doing the dishes, your machine's going to do it, and you'll be able to read a book. You'll be able to sit back and relax. Your husband will come home, and he'll be happy because dinner will be fresh out of the microwave, and he'll have no idea that you didn't spend 4 hours making it. The reality is the exact opposite. All that happened was we created higher standards of cleanliness. Now, instead of washing your sheets once every few weeks, it's every week. And now it's you wash your towels after every use. Now it's I wash my kids' clothes. They can't go to school in a dirty shirt. We have to wash it every single day, make sure they look good. We started saying, well, what are we going to do with all this free time? Well, we better get to work. How are we going to afford all these devices? Well, our wives better go to work. Our husbands better get a second job and a third job because we've got to afford all these time-saving devices so we can finally relax. Since 1950, here are some things that have changed in America. Average Americans spend 3 times as much of our income. Now, that's not 3 times more. That's 3 times as much. So that's comparable incomes. 3 times as much of our income goes to goods and services now than it used to. We're buying more stuff with our money. Less of our money is going towards retirement, savings, prepping for the future, going on vacations, and it's going to goods and services, stuff. The average home has more than doubled in square footage, even though the family size has gone down. So we have bigger homes to fill, but we have less people to fill them with. The average American family has more than 300,000 items in their home. And my kids know how to get all of those items out onto the floor. It's amazing. Like, I heard that stat, and at first I said, whoa. And then I remembered when my kids were toddlers, and they would come downstairs, and we would clean up all night. And the first thing my son would do, he'd come downstairs, and he'd just flip baskets of toys over and knock them on the floor, and then walk away. Like, he's not going to play with those. It's just they don't belong in that basket. So we definitely have 300,000 items in our home. There are more, this one blows my mind. There are more than 2.3 billion square feet of self-storage space in America. So not only are our houses huge and they're full of stuff, but we have to buy secondary storage units like the one next door to us so that we can store the extra stuff that we want to keep but we don't want to look at. We can't get rid of it, but we have to have it. We don't want it in our home, but we'll pay to store it elsewhere. With all of this, we should be happy, right? If stuff is going to make us happy, we have more stuff now than we've ever had. We have time-saving devices. We have leisure-creating devices all over the place. We should finally be happy. But since 1950, which was the height of American happiness, according to studies, I don't know who they were studying, but that's what they say. If you're from the 50s, you can argue. The feeling of happiness has steadily decreased in America from over 50% to now about 20% of people will report feeling very happy in their lives. We think all this stuff will finally make us happy. We think if we just work harder so we can go on nicer vacations, we'll finally be happy. And yet the exact opposite is true. This world is constantly trying to convince us that we need to work more, we need to earn more, we need to try harder, we need to hurry faster so that we can buy the next great device, so that we can spend more money on a bigger house and a newer car and a better title at work. And then finally, we will be enough. Finally, we'll have value. Finally, we'll be able to rest. Sabbath is an act of resistance against this culture, against this world, against this lie. It's a declaration that we are not slaves anymore. We are not tools to be used and discarded, but we are children of God who find our value in Him, not in our usefulness. Sabbath is an act of resistance, first, because Sabbath resists the systems that enslave us. The first time God commanded the Sabbath is in Exodus 20, verses, basically the whole Exodus 20. But in 8 through 10, He commands the Sabbath. And when He does, He has this certain way that He presents it. But there's a second time that God repeats the 10 commandments. The first time is at Mount Sinai. And so this is right after He's released his people from Egypt. They have been enslaved by the Egyptians for 400 years. living in chains, being used as tools to build the Egyptians' culture and empire. God comes and he frees them. This is that famous story of the 10 plagues, the parting of the Red Sea. After that, they meet at Mount Sinai, and they basically have a marriage ceremony with God. God says, hey, I will be your God, and you can be my people. We can do this together. I will love you. I will protect you. I will take care of you. I will defend you. All I need you to do is follow these commands. Take these vows. In our relationship, I want you to be faithful to me. So he lists off these commands. Well, the people, they don't keep those commands. And so they end up wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Because that generation of people, when they were about to enter into a place called the Promised Land, which God says will be a land of rest for their souls, which you might remember that phraseology coming from Jesus later. There's this land of rest that they're going to enter into. They instead get afraid because there's giants, there's strong armies, there's big cities with big walls. And so they say, no, God, we should just go back to Egypt. At least we had onions and garlic there. Now we're eating bread. And so God says, you know what? I'm not going to take you back to Egypt. I'm not going to enslave you again, but all of you people who just rejected me and said, I can't take care of you, I can't protect you, you know what? You're going to wander around the desert for 40 years, and your children will enter the Promised Land, not you. So for 40 years they wander, until finally they reach that same point. They're about to cross into the Promised Land. The moment, it's a repeat of the story. And so in this repeat moment, God gives their children the 10 Commandments. And they're mostly verbatim, except for this command, the Sabbath command. In Exodus, he told them to remember the Sabbath by keeping it holy. This is the idea of just bringing it to mind. It's like it's a natural thing. It's what we talked about last week. There is a pattern to this world, and God said, just live in that pattern. Don't forget that there's a pattern to this world. Don't forget that you need to stop working sometimes. But here in Deuteronomy, when he talks to the children of these people, he tells them to observe the Sabbath. Now, observing means to guard or protect, to keep watch over. It's kind of this idea of like, this is a thing. Yes, you know you should do it, but you're not. You know you should remember. You remember it, but you discard it the first time something comes up in your life. You need to keep watch over it. This is why last week I told you to schedule your Sabbath, that you need to plan ahead, that you need to take things off your chart, off your list of to-dos, so that you can actually Sabbath. Because if you don't plan for it, it'll never happen, because this world will just constantly keep throwing new things at you. So you have to plan ahead. So most of the next section is pretty much verbatim until the end. See, in the Sabbath command in Exodus, God says the reason you should Sabbath is because I Sabbath. I rested on the seventh day, so you should rest on the seventh day. I did it. It's a part of the pattern of how I've made you, so get into this rhythm of life. But for these children who've grown up in the wilderness, their parents were freed slaves, he doesn't say that it was because of this pattern of life. Instead, he says, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, your Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. You see, God recognized something in these people. You can take the slave out of Egypt, but you can't take the Egypt out of the slave. They might have been free, but they were still living like they were in chains. They were still living like their value was from their output. You see, when they were in Egypt, they had slave masters. They were tools to be used and discarded when they lost their usefulness. Here are just some of the things that Pharaoh says about the slaves. In Exodus 1, he says It says that they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. It says that they worked them ruthlessly. It says that they made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. Then listen to what Pharaoh says about them later when they ask if they can go worship God one day a week in the wilderness. Pharaoh said, "Lazy. That's what you are, lazy. That is why you keep saying, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks." When they tried to create space to worship God, they were told they were lazy. They were unproductive. They were useless. This is what we feel. We don't have a Pharaoh who's ruling over us, and yet don't we hear that same voice when we try to create space for God to work in our lives? Do you hear the voice of Pharaoh in your own head saying, "You're lazy. You're unproductive. If you don't work, you're good for nothing"? See, slaves don't get to rest. Slaves don't get to say, "I need a day off." Slaves are tools, not people. So when God frees his slaves, he tells them, "You are no longer only as good as what you do or what you accomplish or what you can produce. You are my children who I love. And because you're my children, you need to rest. You need to stop your slaving because your slave masters are gone." But he also warns them, don't just stop yourselves, but let everyone rest. He commands them to let the foreigner residing among them. He says, let the animals, the donkeys, your sons and daughters, your males and females, everyone gets to Sabbath. Because God also knows this about slaves. Slaves enslave others. It's kind of like today, we have this little phrase, bullies bully. Bullied people tend to bully others. They know how much it hurts. They know how wrong it is. And yet there's something in the human heart that makes us feel stronger when we can put someone else down. And even if we know we've been through it, we still do it. And so God wants this culture, this people, to be different. He wants them to be people who treat everyone as if they matter, that there are no tools, that people are image bearers, that even our animals, even our land has value. The promised land was meant to be a place where they would finally be free, a place of rest. But they needed to relearn what freedom meant, just like we do. So many of us are convinced in our hearts and in our minds that we are only as good as what we produce. We're only as good as the title we have, as the money we earn, as the contribution that we can have. But that can be such a dangerous way of thinking. Because God says that we are loved no matter what. If you're only as good as what you produce, what happens when you get hurt? What happens when you get sick? What happens when your child is born with a disability and they'll never hold down a job? What happens when you get elderly and you can no longer do the things you used to do? Do you lose your value and your worth? Or does it come from not from Pharaoh, but from God? Does he say, "You're still my child and I still love you, and I loved you just as much when you could lift the chairs in youth group and carry 4 of them to the side as I do when you're in your 80s or 90s and you just have to sit there and watch the kids do it? You haven't lost anything to me. It hasn't changed at all." You know, the difference between us and slaves is that we choose our chains. We choose to enslave ourselves. We take a job and we think that this job will finally be the thing that satisfies me, will finally be the thing that gives me meaning and purpose. And so we say, you know what, if it means I have to give up my Sundays, that's just what it means. I guess I won't go to church anymore. If it means I can't spend time with my kids anymore, well, at least they'll be able to have the best uniform at baseball practice. I'll be able to buy them the top of the line bat, and that'll make up for the fact that I'm never there. I was talking to a dad last night, and he said, there's times where I think my kids don't really care because they roll their eyes when I show up. They're embarrassed by me constantly, whatever I say. But he says, I've noticed when I go to their games, they always look for me in the stands. Now, they used to smile and get excited and wave, and they don't do that anymore. But there's still this moment where they look for me. And there's this look in their eye of, I hope he's there. I hope he's showing up today. And that goes away as soon as they see you because they don't want to let you know that they feel that, right? They're teenagers. They're too cool for you. But it was there. Because showing up is so much more valuable than buying them the new Jordans. Being there is what matters. Sabbath is a declaration that we are not slaves anymore. We are not enslaved by our sin. We are not enslaved by fear. We are not enslaved by anxiety. We're not enslaved by doubt. We are free because we're children of God and we know who our King is. So we can enter the promised land knowing that God goes before us and he'll fight our battles, that he'll bring the blessing. Amen? And this comes to the second thing. Sabbath resists the never-ending pursuit of enough. In Exodus 16, before God gives the command to Sabbath, there's a moment where the people are in the desert. And they're crying out, they're hungry, they need food. And God says, okay, I'm going to give you food. And so he starts raining down this bread from heaven. It's called manna. And it's something that we've never seen. Nobody knows really what it is. In fact, the name manna means what is it? So they went outside, they looked at this bread, they said, manna. And that's what the bread became. Okay, so it's what is it bread? It was this doughy, weird substance that showed up on the ground, but it satisfied their needs. It met their needs. It filled their bellies. And God commanded them every day, go out into the fields and gather the bread that you need for that day. He said, don't gather more than you need. Don't store it up because tomorrow I'm going to bring it again. And I want you to trust me that I will provide for you tomorrow just like I'll provide for you today. And so every day they would go out, and when people would gather too much, they'd wake up in the morning and they'd find it full of maggots. Protein. That's one way to look at it. Remind me not to eat his casserole when he brings something to our meals. So every day they would go out and they'd collect exactly what they needed, except for on the sixth day. On the sixth day, they were commanded to collect twice as much and store it. And somehow, when they stored it that day, they'd wake up in the morning and it wouldn't be full of maggots. It'd be fresh bread. Well, the sixth day was, of course, leading into the Sabbath. And on the Sabbath, God would not rain the bread down from heaven. God rested. And on the Sabbath, he didn't want them to go out in the field and collect their bread because he'd already provided enough the day before. He said, trust me that I will give you enough. This was part of that rhythm of life. This was part of training these enslaved people who were constantly told to work, 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 that it's okay to trust God, that he'll give you enough. This is actually what Jesus harkens back to when he teaches us to pray, and he begins his prayer with, give us this day our daily bread. We want to pray, God, give me this day my 401k at the highest I've ever seen it. But Jesus says, give us this day our daily bread. Just give me what I need for today. I just need to get through today. Sabbath is an act of trust. It's a declaration that God is enough for us. That we believe that he will follow through on his word to protect us, to guide us, to love us, to provide for us. When you Sabbath, you cease your productivity. You cease your efforting. You cease your work. You cease all the things that this world says give you value. And you rest in the idea that I am enough just as I am. I don't need anything in this world to assign value to me because God has told me I am dearly loved. I am a child. I am chosen. I am free. So this week, I want to give you some challenges. First challenge, and this one sort of occurred to me yesterday as I tried the Sabbath yesterday, and I'll tell you, I did not do very good yesterday. I woke up in a really bad mood. And so my Sabbath started off with me being really nasty to my family, which, pastors, we fall into this trap too sometimes. And at one point in the morning, I just realized that I was the problem. My kids were grumpy, my wife was grumpy, but I realized it was because of me. I started it, right? So I had to just sit everybody down and I had to say, I'm sorry. I really have screwed up this Sabbath thing because I started off with all these things that I wanted to accomplish on my Sabbath day, which isn't that exactly the wrong attitude to have? I wanted the perfect Sabbath. I was going to rest. I was going to read my Bible in silence. And then my kids were up early, and so they were running around the house, and they ruined my time with God. But I realized as we were Sabbathing, we did a lot of going out, we did a lot of shopping, we did a lot of stuff, and I just realized how much we spend every single day. Your money just grows wings and flies out of your wallet. Have you realized that? So I have a challenge for you this week. As you try to Sabbath this week, I want you to try this. Try to do a no-spend Sabbath. Try to prepare your Sabbath in advance enough that you don't have to go to the grocery on the Sabbath. You don't have to go out to eat. Maybe you've got some pre-made meals already in the fridge. But especially just don't, with all the marketing that's out there that says that this one thing will finally make you happy, try to just spend a day resting in what you already have. Enjoying what God has already given you and see if that isn't just enough. Maybe you've got all you need. And you don't need the new gadget, the new thing, the new tool. I know that's a hard one for some guys in the room. No Home Depot on Saturday. That's my daily routine, not just weekly. Resist the urge to buy, to sell, to trade, to acquire. Push back. Resist the culture that says if you just spend more, you'll finally be happy. The second thing is stop and just take some time to be aware of all of the ads that are bombarding you. Take some time this week to just realize, as you're watching something or as you're reading an article or as you're just going through your life, just start to recognize how many things out there are telling you that you don't have enough, that your life isn't complete without them. Without this new gadget, this new gizmo. And if you just had this, then you'd be happy. Part of, I think, our problem is we've become so numb to it that we just let it go in and out, and we're constantly convinced. I can't tell you how many times I've bought something on a whim. I saw an ad. Every once in a while an ad will just capture you. You're watching a YouTube video and you always hit skip, but there's one that just catches you and you get stuck watching it. And at the end, you find yourself, I bought this thing that attaches to my drill. It has all these different brush heads that I can use. You can use them on your car. You can use them on your grill. You can use them on your house. You can use them on anything. Your shower. I have this whole bag full of them in my garage. I have never once used them. I don't know what I was doing. My drill barely ever has a charge. I don't know what I was going to go in my shower and use a drill on my shower? But I watched this video and I thought, there it is. Now I'll have enough. Now my life will be complete. And there it sits in my garage, unused, a complete waste of money that could have been spent any number of ways. And it was all because some ad caught me at the right moment when I was weak And I bought the lie that this was the ultimate tool. Finally, I found it. The final thing I want to challenge you to is practice gratitude. As you Sabbath this week, take some time to just recognize your blessings. Recognize the things that you do have. Instead of focusing on what you don't have, instead of focusing on what you lack, focus on what you do have. Focus on your health. Focus on your energy. Focus on the blessings that maybe you're sitting on a couch during your Sabbath and you might want to take a moment and realize, wow, this couch is really comfortable. Maybe you're looking at your bird feeder and you're looking at these birds eating the seed that you just put in there and you're thinking, wow, I have the expendable income where I can feed birds. I can spend money on bird seeds, and there are people in the world who are starving and I'm buying bird seed. It's kind of nonsense. It's kind of like I talked to a missionary one time who said they were driving around town, they saw an animal resort. You know those pet resorts that you drop your dogs off to, and they get pampered, and you leave them for a weekend or whatever? And the guy said, in my country, we have people starving, and you guys are spending money to put your pets in resorts. It's a little weird. Not saying you shouldn't do it. This is not judgment on anyone. I love my doggie. She's beautiful. I spend way too much on her haircuts. But when's the last time you were grateful that you could do that? When's the last time you said, wow, God, thank you that you do give me enough for my daily bread? You actually give me so much that I can get my dog a manicure. Or would it be a pedicure? Do dogs have hands? I guess not, right? Pedicure. A peticure. Oh, a pedicure. I'm going to start. Guys, I'm retiring. I'm going to start a business. Pedicures. It sells itself, people. I'll finally be enough. I have the idea. Practice gratitude. Recognize all the things that God has blessed you with. Maybe write a list. I'll bet that you'll run out of paper before you run out of things to write down. Even if you're struggling with your health, even if you're going through a bad time, even if you maybe don't have as many things as you wish you did, I bet if you really start to think about it, maybe you're in your 70s and you've just gotten a bad diagnosis and you're going, man, this is tough. I don't know. When's the last time you thanked God for those 70 years? For the family he gave you, for the friendships you formed, for the ways that you've impacted this world because you've followed God. This morning, we're going to have the band come forward. We're going to continue worshiping. And I want to just remind you that every single Sabbath, every time we take a day for the Lord, is an act of resistance. It resists the lie that we are only as good as what we do. It resists the systems that try to enslave us in this idea that we have to spend and spend and spend until we're so deep in debt that we are slaves to our creditors. It resists the anxiety that the world depends on us, that if we stop, that something will not happen and this world will stop spinning. And it reminds us most of all that there is a greater rest than even this. Hebrews 4:9 says that there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. That there is a greater Sabbath that is coming at the end. That we will enter into rest with God at the end. And so what Sabbath is a weekly practice of our eternity. This is how we're going to spend eternity, is in Sabbath rest with God. Eternal rest that Christ has prepared for us. If you hate Sabbath now, eternity is going to be rough. So take time to learn to embrace your limits and enjoy God's goodness. In Genesis 2, when God stops and he rests at the end of his week of creating. But if you notice something, he creates Adam and Eve on the sixth day. So their life does not, their week, their life, their existence does not begin with work. It actually begins with his day of rest. See, humanity started in the rest and then began to work. We were made to rest. It is a gift for our good. There's a Jewish scholar, Abraham Joshua Heschel, who wrote about the Sabbath. He said this: unless one learns how to relish the taste of the Sabbath, one will be unable to enjoy the taste of eternity in the world to come. This Sabbath rest is a taste of heaven for us. It's what we were made for. So this week, as you try to Sabbath, as you attempt your Sabbath, realize that this is what God made you to experience. This is not weird. This is not different. This is eternity on earth for a taste, just a foretaste of what's to come. Let's stand together and let's continue worshiping this morning.
Amen.